Greetings, everyone, and welcome to episode 119 of Teaching Tales, the podcast totally devoted to sharing stories from the world of education. I am Brent. I'm a former teacher, former assistant principal, former elementary principal, currently in the role of coordinator of elementary education. And in this episode, I want to share a couple quick stories that hopefully will illustrate the power of moments. And what I mean by that is the potential impact that we can make on those that we interact with in even those smallest, shortest, briefest moments. This year, our superintendent rolled out our district's theme, and it is The Power of Moments. It's based on a book by Chip and Dan Heath called The Power of Moments. If you're looking for a good read, it's definitely one that I would recommend. But I had a couple things happen to me yesterday that prompted the recording of this episode. So I want to share those. Let me jump right in with this first story. Yesterday morning when I got into the office and I fired up the computer and I opened my email, I had a message waiting for me from one of the teachers in our district, a teacher that I have worked with before. She is in a new position at a new school site this year. And it was a very short email, and she basically just let me know that her assistant principal, again, she's at a new site. We've been in school for about three and a half weeks. Her assistant principal came in the room. She said he came in the room to basically check in and see how things were going and if I needed anything. And in her email, the next sentence was one word. Wow! Exclamation point. And she said that him coming in just completely contributed to her feeling valued, to her feeling welcomed and supported at her new site. So let me just unpack that for a second. Her assistant principal swung by the classroom to just say, how things going? Yet that small action prompted this teacher to get on her computer and send me an email and let me know that simple action of checking in made her feel supported and made her feel welcome at her new site. So let's stick a pin in that story right there. That's story number one. Let me move to story number two. Later yesterday, I'm back in our office and I had a short conversation with one of my colleagues who had spent the day earlier in the day out at one of our elementary sites helping the school implement one of our new programs during recesses and lunches as part of our multi-tiered systems of support, our MTSS program, where they're incorporating more organized, structured activities and games during recess and lunch in an attempt to be more inclusive and make sure that everybody's got something to do and feels involved, and also just kind of diminish the chaos that can happen on a blacktop or a field when you have large numbers of kids without a lot of structured activities. So she's at the school site and she's there to help introduce a new game to the playground supervisors there and the students. And she told me that when she was getting ready to start, she noticed a student who was by herself, I guess, sitting at the bench, and she was reading a book. And she said before they started introducing the game, she approached the student and just said, "Hey," I said, "Do you want to come play a new game with us?" And she told me that the student kind of thought about it for just a very brief moment and kind of had a look on her face, and she looked up at her and she said, "Yes, I would." And she hopped up and they walked over to the game, and my colleague proceeded and they went through the whole introduction of the game and played the game, and fast forward to recess ending. They're kind of cleaning things up and students are heading back to their lines after recess is over. And this one particular student that my colleague had reached out to and invited to play the game on her own came up to my colleague, looked at her and said, "Thank you for inviting me to play in the game," and walked away. Now just let that marinate for a second, if you will. My colleague was aware of her surroundings. She had the situational awareness to scan the playground, and she noticed a student who was by herself reading a book, and took it upon herself to walk over and invite that student to play in the game. Now, is there anything wrong with a student sitting and reading a book? Absolutely not. No way. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. That student may absolutely love reading and could have been perfectly content with reading her book by herself during recess. Or that student may be dying to play in a game but has never been invited. Until yesterday, when my colleague made the small, simple action to invite this student in. And I have to think, now let's take both of these stories again. First story with the teacher. Do you think that teacher went home and told her husband what her assistant principal had done? I am fairly certain that happened. You're never going to believe what happened. The assistant principal stopped in and just checked on me and just saw how I was doing. Do you think that this student at recess went home and told mom or dad about the experience that she had at recess? I am very, very confident that she did. That those two moments by the assistant principal and by my colleague made a huge impact on the teacher and the student. But the thing I really want to point out here is, did either of those actions, were they what you would consider huge actions? Were they labor intensive, time intensive? Did it cost them any money? No, and no. The assistant principal popped into the classroom. The teacher saw a student, took the few extra steps to walk over to the bench and invite. But I argue in both of those cases, that student and that teacher, I don't have to argue it. I know both of them in those moments were greatly impacted. So what I would encourage you is this: if you're a teacher and you're listening to this, think of the two stories that I just shared. If you're walking down the hallways and at recess or lunch, or you've dropped your kids off and you see a student sitting by himself or sitting by herself, even if it's something as simple as just stopping by and saying, "Hey buddy, how you doing today?" Or, "How was your weekend?" The simple act of asking somebody how they're doing, you might be the first person who is interacting with that individual all day. If you're in your classroom and you see a student who's maybe seems a little down and out, ask them how they're doing. Take the extra effort, because again, it's not a lot of extra effort to just interact with them, because your student may be like this student at recess. This could be the one thing this student has been waiting for, has been dying for, somebody to invite her to play in a game. If you're a leader in your organization, if you're an assistant principal, a principal, you're at the district office, anything like that, I would encourage you, that first story, check in with your people. Swing by your classrooms. And if you're thinking, "Oh, I don't have time," I am here because I've been in those positions. I'm telling you, you do not have time not to do it. Because if you don't check in with your people may not feel valued, your people may not feel supported, and your people may leave. And then you've got to rehire people and introduce them to your organization. You don't have time for that. So again, how much time did it take for this assistant principal to pop by a classroom? A couple of minutes. Did it cost him any money? Nope. Did it make an impact on this teacher? 100%. So much so that she took it upon herself to send me, somebody that she's previously worked with, an email letting me know how big of an impact it had. Check in with your people, whether those people are kids, whether those people are adults. If you're walking down the hallway or you're walking past classrooms and the door's open and you see somebody is in there, I strongly, strongly encourage you, just pop your head and say, "Happy Friday, happy Wednesday, have a great weekend," whatever it is. And if you know their name, use their name, because as I previously talked, There's power when you use somebody's name. Because again, I do not think this is hyperbolic when I say that may be the only time that day that somebody interacted with that person. If that person's working in an office, you may be the only person who interacted with them, the only person who acknowledged them. They may be thinking, does anyone even know that I'm here? Your simple hello, happy Friday, hey, good to see you today, may make that person's day, week, or even month. So I want to close with one additional story from my experience. This happened a few years ago, and I just kind of want to hopefully drive this point home. When I was a principal at our elementary school, at the end of one of our school years, we gave our school community, our families, an opportunity to say thank you to our staff members, whether it was a classroom teacher, an aide, playground supervisor, cafeteria workers, our custodians, administration, crossing guards, anybody who worked in our organization. We sent out a form to our community and gave them an opportunity to just write a little note of thanks. And I think I've talked about this before, but this part of the story I think is new. I don't think I've shared this before. So it was awesome. We got like 1,000 different responses. And imagine the impact that those moments had when we were able to share those notes of appreciation with our staff members. And I got a particular note of thanks from one of our fifth grade students. She was a promoting fifth grade student who was going to be leaving our school and heading out to middle school the following year. And her note was very simple. It just said, "Thank you, Mr. Coley, for helping me up on the first day of school when I fell down." Let me say that again. It said, "Thank you, Mr. Coley, for helping me up on the first day of school when I fell down." Now, mind you, I want to remind you, we did this opportunity to say thanks, to write notes of appreciation on like the last week of school. So we're talking like 175 days later. I get a note from a student that said, "Thanks for helping me up on the first day of school when I fell down." Now, here's the confession that I have to make. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't remember helping this student up on the first day of school. I have no recollection of helping this student up. But I mean, I was at the front of the school every morning greeting kids at the loop and at the front gate, walking them in. So I'm sure that she probably tripped and I helped her up. I don't remember that. But guess what? She did. And 175 days later, when she had the opportunity to say thank you to somebody, she thanked me for helping her up. That was a moment. There was power in that moment and that simple act of, "Oh, here, let me help you up." That's all I did. And I don't even remember it. So just in closing, ladies and gentlemen, power of moments. Every single interaction you have with somebody around you, whether it's a student, whether it's a family member, whether it's one of your teachers, if you're in a leadership position, whether it's the barista at Starbucks, whether it's the person behind the counter at the restaurant that you're ordering from, every single person you encounter, that's a moment. That's an opportunity for you to positively impact that person. And every one of these stories that I shared, from me helping a student up, to the assistant principal stopping into the classroom to see how she was doing, to the third story about inviting that student to play in a game at recess. None of those cost money. None of those required a lot of effort. I mean, very, very minimal effort. And none of those required an extensive amount of time. So if you get anything out of this, as you go to the office tomorrow, as you go to work tomorrow, as you stop into Starbucks tomorrow, I would encourage you, don't overlook the power of the moment, meaning your interaction with somebody could be the interaction that they talk about 175 days later, 70 years later, whatever it is, because you have that much impact on those that you interact with. So again, thank you so much for listening. Hope you got something out of this. I really appreciate you listening. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe. That way, it's been a while since I've done episodes. Things have been quite busy, but if you subscribe, then every time a new episode drops, it'll automatically drop into your podcast feeder. You can subscribe in iTunes, Amazon Podcasts. We're in Audible, we're in Spotify, or you can listen directly on the podcast page at my website at brentcoley.com. And if you enjoyed listening to stories like this, I encourage you to just remind everybody, I have written a book called Stories of Edu Influence, where the entire book is pretty much what I just did, where I share stories from the classroom or the front office that illustrate I call it edu influence, the influence that we have that can make life-changing impact on those we serve, whether it's you're a teacher, whether you're an administrator, whether you're a crossing guard, whether you're a bus driver, or whether you're a businessman or businesswoman. It makes no difference who you are. You have the ability to impact those around you. So once again, thank you so much for listening. Have a great rest of your day. And until next time, have a good one.